In a shocking statement, Dr. Anthony Fauci said he is, quote, not convinced COVID-19 developed naturally outside the Wuhan lab. He has called for an investigation, saying, I think we should continue to investigate what went on in China. Now, as I have warned over and over again, Dr. Anthony Fauci is an extremely dangerous individual, and his opinions are based on news media from a couple days prior. That's consistently how things have gone. The man watches TV and then just tells you what he heard on TV, but people believe him as though he's some kind of expert. I have numerous examples to break down when Fauci has flip-flopped and negatively impacted public policy, which I'll get to. But this is one of those times. Previously, it was reported that Fauci said, no, lab leak is not correct. And now for some reason, he's coming out saying, okay, maybe lab leak hypothesis is possible. Why? Because in the media, reports have come out now showing that there is strong evidence that lab leak hypothesis may be true. Is strong evidence definitive proof? No, it isn't. But strong evidence. In fact, when you go to Google and search Wuhan lab COVID, Google in bold puts right up at the top, 3 Wuhan lab staffers were reportedly hospitalized in 2019 with massive breaking news from almost every single major news outlet. Surprise, surprise. A day later, Fauci comes out and says, well, now that I think about it, all of the times people have followed this man, I feel bad for them. But those of you who watch my show and pay attention to the news, you've probably been better informed. But this is where things get creepy. As I mentioned, many news outlets are reporting that there are these hospitalizations and more evidence that lab leak hypothesis may be true, which means lab leak hypothesis is the idea that someone may have had a virus in this lab. It may have naturally developed, but then it may have been released accidentally. Someone may have gotten infected. And I've talked about this even last year. It made mainstream headlines very slowly, but was debunked. So saith the fact checkers that be. New York Times, Vox, CNN, many said it was either, they alluded to the fact that it was discredited or not true, or that Trump was pushing wild stories. Now they are falling over themselves desperate because they look like fools. Some outlets doing stealth edits. You know what that means? It means they're going in and issuing corrections or changes without telling their readers because they don't want to look stupid. They're in fact trying to rewrite history because their credibility is in the gutter. You cannot trust these mainstream news outlets. They do this all of the time, and it's creepy. One of the most significant stories was about Tucker Carlson. PolitiFact actually had to update an old fact check admitting it was false. You see, they said they debunked lab leak hypothesis by asking for the opinions of a small handful of researchers. Now, excuse me, but opinions from researchers is not fact. Fact requires actual investigation. So how do you debunk something based on someone's opinion? This is the media landscape we live in. But there's 2 huge things we're seeing today. Fauci, once again discredited, as well as the mainstream media. You can't trust these organizations. When conservatives were coming out and saying this may be a possibility, when President Trump said that he was investigating this and he's seen evidence, they mocked, ridiculed, and they lied. They lied. Fauci is wrong every step of the way. If not, he is deliberately lying. And I'll show you the evidence, and it'll make you laugh. It'll probably also make you sad. But let me read this story from The Hill. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, click the members only button, and become a member to get access to our exclusive members only area with excellent podcast segments with our guests. This is only available to our members, and some of these are full episodes. When you sign up, you're helping me grow this business, and we've got a ton of expansion underway. We're trying to hire tons more people. We're going to be doing field reports, mini documentaries, short films, etc. with your support. So become a member, get involved, help us do more work. But don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Let people know. From Changing America, Fauci bombshell. Not convinced COVID-19 developed naturally outside Wuhan lab. The Hill reports Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and President Biden's chief medical advisor, is supporting an open investigation of the coronavirus origin, saying earlier this month he is not convinced it developed naturally. When asked about whether the virus originated naturally, Fauci said he wants to look closer into the matter, according to Fox News. Quote, I am not convinced about that. I think we should continue to investigate what went on in China until we continue to find out the best of our ability what happened, to the best of our ability. Certainly the people who investigated it say it was likely the emergence from an animal reservoir that then infected individuals, but it could have been something else, and we need to find that out. So, that's the reason why I said I'm perfectly in favor of any investigation that looks into the origins of the virus. As The Hill previously reported, Fauci and Senator Rand Paul clashed over the role of a virology lab in Wuhan, China, in the origins of COVID-19. Paul accused the doctor of being linked with the Chinese government and supporting the laboratory that bioengineered the deadly virus. Wait, hold on. Did The Hill just definitively report that the lab bioengineered the virus? Because I ain't saying that. Hold on. Accused the doctor of being linked with the Chinese government and supporting the lab that bioengineered the deadly virus, citing there is a connection between the NIH and the Wuhan lab, a false narrative circulating among right-wing media and politicians. Amazing deceit. Absolutely amazing from The Hill. Who wrote this? They don't even have a byline on this? Christian Spencer, that's the byline. They say that the link between the NIH and the Wuhan lab is a false narrative. Well, I've got a PolitiFact link right here, debating the origins of the COVID-19 virus that actually talks about gain-of-function research. Senator Rand Paul, who attacked Fauci over the pandemic, and other critics have suggested the U.S. played a role in making the pandemic worse. Fauci and others have denied that. They've also called for more investigation of what happened in China. It's a fact that the U.S. provided funding. Now, maybe they're getting specific and saying NIH, but I'm pretty sure that's true. PolitiFact actually says the argument is about whether it was gain-of-function research or something else. You want to argue semantics, fine. But this is how the media plays the game. Over back at The Hill, they say, Changing America also reported that a group of prominent scientists does not want to rule out the possibility that the coronavirus was human-made in a laboratory. Now, that's going above and beyond even what I think we should be looking into. I think the first thing we do is check to see if lab leak hypothesis is possible. But The Hill is actually saying it's possible the coronavirus was man-made in a lab, pending additional information. The CDC is investigating reports that young adults and adolescents who received COVID-19 vaccines experienced heart inflammation after their second dose. The Hill is really going heavy into this one. I got to tell you what. Let me just stress again. Changing America, this is The Hill, reported that a group of prominent scientists does not want to rule out the possibility the virus was man-made. Now, they better issue a correction on this one, because look at this. When Rand Paul questioned Fauci, he didn't say that COVID-19 was man-made and bioengineered. He said, do you support the funding provided to the Wuhan lab? The argument is whether or not, my understanding, based on PolitiFact, whether or not the funding was for gain-of-function research, which is when they try and make viruses stronger for a particular reason. The Hill says the lab bioengineered the virus. Now that's a bold statement. The White House has not provided evidence to refute the lab leak theory. I'm sorry, if this is what The Hill is offering up, let me just stress that lab leak is becoming beyond prominent. I mean, The Hill is going way past just we were researching a virus and it broke out. The lab leak hypothesis, simply put, is that they were doing research on naturally occurring viruses and it leaked from a lab. That's it. That's all. Now, beyond there, some people are talking about gain-of-function research and whether or not the virus was engineered in any capacity. Some people have said as much, but we don't have any definitive proof. I'm not a virologist. I wouldn't be able to tell you. I can only tell you what they're reporting in the media. The Wall Street Journal reported that 3 researchers from the Wuhan Institute of Virology were sick around November 2019 and had to be hospitalized. No one knows how all 3 researchers got sick or why, according to the undisclosed intelligence report from the U.S. The journal reports that China denies the allegation that the virus somehow was created in their lab and was leaked. China's foreign ministry cited the team, led by the World Health Organization, which said it was unlikely that the virus came from China on Sunday. The U.S. continues to hype the lab leak theory, the Chinese foreign ministry told the journal. It is actually concerned about tracing the source or trying to divert attention. Sorry, I don't trust the Chinese Communist Party, but I can show you how the media is freaking out. Better yet, Drew Holden, who has been a frequent guest of Timcast IRL podcast, he can tell you better how the media has pushed the nonsense. In a thread, Drew says, the idea that COVID-19 may have leaked from a lab in Wuhan has gained mainstream traction. It can be easy to forget that little over a year ago, the idea was derided as a vile, senseless conspiracy theory. First, he says, Senator Tom Cotton took much of the initial heat for suggesting this as a possibility back in January. Here's what the New York Times had to say about his fringe theory that lacks evidence and which scientists have dismissed. Apparently, those concerns have been undismissed. In another piece from 2020, the New York Times concluded, most agencies remain skeptical, and scientists are dismissive of the lab leak theory. Unfortunately, appears that was certainly true, but not to their credit. Yet another story continues to describe the idea as a conspiracy. It wasn't just the New York Times. CNN was at the forefront, writing up a poll dismissively suggesting that an accidental release was almost certainly not true, called the lab in question the focus of conspiracies, and of course used it to take shots at President Trump. CNN was content to be used as a conduit for Chinese propaganda on the subject. 2, seemingly trusting a dishonest autocratic regime at their word. Giving free airtime to a hostile power's propaganda should be indefensible. Here's a piece from Chris Cillizza from February 2020 that points back to a CNN fact check, suggesting that you can draw a line through it and say that it didn't happen about the lab release theory. Care to revisit this one, Mr. Cillizza? Jake Tapper also took a shot at Tom Cotton, sharing an interview with an expert that Cotton's views were something that he put in the conspiracy theory bucket. Luckily, in case your relatives were suggesting that this conspiracy theory about a lab release were true, Oliver Darcy has you covered with his How to Debunk Coronavirus Misinformation and Conspiracy Theories piece that references the origin of the virus. NPR might have been the most dismissive, running stories on back-to-back days, suggesting there was nothing to the allegations, and the scientists debunked and dismissed the idea of accidental release. They were, in retrospect, entirely wrong, but memory hold these pieces. And the joke we have over here at Timcast is that journalists debunked the claim using the opinions of some random people. Okay, researchers, but still. What are you going to do? Get literally every single researcher to agree? You still can't assert it as fact. It's expert opinion. So we say that they debunked, and now we must rebunk. Although that actually doesn't make sense, because I think the idea of debunk is like to remove the bunk, the nonsense. And like rebunk would mean to make nonsense. So anyway, you get the point. Rebunking. Drew goes on. The way that MSNBC and Chris Hayes frame these two separate issues seems instructive. When a theory about enough evidence doesn't help the narrative, it's a conspiracy theory. When it does help the narrative, it's just an open question, even if it's a lot less plausible. Perhaps the worst offender was the Washington Post, who in January of 2020 said that Senator Tom Cotton's concerns about a potential lab leak in Wuhan were fanning the embers of a conspiracy theory that has been repeatedly debunked by experts. Let's talk about what it means to debunk. Okay, so Donald Trump claims that there's this video, it was shot by a reporter of me doing a perfect backflip, landing in the grass in the White House. A perfect backflip, you say. The reporter comes out and says no such video exists. The phone is then checked and no such video exists. Then I think it's fine to say it was debunked. Or how about this? The video pops up and it turns out Donald Trump, in fact, did a front flip. Yes. Although it's not completely false, Donald Trump's claim at that point would have been debunked. It was, in fact, a front flip. Maybe semantics, but a front flip and backflip are different things. The point is, you can debunk things when you have factual evidence. The sky is actually green. Well, sometimes maybe in a thunderstorm, but for the most part, it's blue. So you can debunk the claim, sort of. You see how it's not particularly easy? Because some things can be true. Some things, people say the sky is blue. And I say, actually, the sky is green during a thunderstorm. It's one of the tricks they use in fact checking. So it's not always that easy. But it's the dirty game they play. They take an opinion and say, we asked a guy who had an opinion we already knew about, and he said it wasn't true, therefore debunked. Sorry. No, not how it works. Drew Holden says, but that wasn't all from the Washington Post. I don't get how you can fact check something that we don't know the facts on, nonetheless conclude that one potentially is doubtful. And notice the defensive crouch here and everywhere else around this unsubstantiated lab theory. This from Politico is precisely the type of amnesia that infects reporting like this. 2 months ago, they were lamenting how warnings and concerns about bat research had been ignored. A year before that, they chalked concerns about the Wuhan lab up to conspiracy theories. Politico, a report from March 8th, 2021. In 2018, diplomats warned of risky coronavirus experiments in a Wuhan lab. No one listened. Yes, I think it's fair to say they have amnesia. My absolute favorite Politico moment is how Politico published a report saying Ukrainians were scrambling after it came out that they were helping the Democrats in the 2016 election. They came out then later with other reports saying not true that it ever happened. And it's like, you're the ones who reported this. Do you have amnesia? It's amazing, isn't it? Drew goes on to say, there was a rush across the board to tell the story as a battle between Trump and a lab in China. As you can imagine, Trump played the role of the villain, at least for places like ABC back in May of 2020. NBC News leaned into the same framing, referring to the idea that the virus could have originated from a Wuhan lab as a conspiracy theory. Now, let me just pause for 1 second and say, here's the criticism. We still don't know that COVID leaked from a lab in Wuhan. There's a new report from U.S. intelligence that 3 researchers got sick in November with COVID-like symptoms. So maybe it did. That's about it. It should be investigated. But the media hating Donald Trump, and no matter what the man did, they had to say it was wrong. It was not true. It was a lie. The media has caused so much destruction in this country. And that's the sad reality of what's happening. Donald Trump could say something and the media would call him a liar. Drew Holden also says, it's hard to fault CBS News when the sources weren't exactly bulletproof in retrospect, but that makes a broader point. Journalists should be distrustful of official sources of info. That's historically been true lately. That's historically been true. Lately, it's been anything but, leading to errors like this. CBS News says Fauci again dismisses Wuhan lab as source of coronavirus, followed by WHO team in Wuhan says extremely unlikely COVID-19 came from a lab. And now the glorious Fauci says, okay, maybe, I'm not convinced it didn't. Fauci himself gobbling up Chinese propaganda. It's really gross. Here's one. Fauci, May 22, Fauci, May 2021. And there's the example from Drew Holden once again. Now, here's where it gets downright creepy. Some of the stealth edits that Vox made to its article debunking conspiracy theories that COVID-19 originated in a lab leak between its original publication in March 2020 and now. This is what the media does. First, they said, virologists who've parsed the genome have more than enough evidence to show that the virus is brand new and came from nature, not the Wuhan lab. Now it says, but already virologists who've parsed the genome say they have enough evidence the virus is brand new and came from nature. They removed the section about the Wuhan lab. Have more than enough evidence to show, say they have enough. The big difference between having evidence and claiming you do. Very important. And also they add, the emergence of the virus in the same city turns out is pure coincidence. They changed it to appears to be pure coincidence. They went back and changed this story. Why? Because they're rewriting history. Because they're embarrassed. Because they're terrible at what they do. Because they don't know how to do their jobs. Shant Misrobian on Twitter says the highly researched and reported article that is spurring renewed focus on the COVID lab leak hypothesis, written by a veteran science writer and former New York Times reporter, had to be self-published on Medium. Think about what that says about our current media environment. And now on Google, when you search, this is what's truly amazing to me. When you Google search Wuhan lab COVID, Google itself has included a big, bold sentence. 3 Wuhan lab staffers were reportedly hospitalized in 2019. I want to show you how sickening this is. You may have seen this because we've covered it before. PolitiFact. The Poynter Institute. PolitiFact is supposed to check the facts. They said, archived fact check. Tucker Carlson guest airs debunked conspiracy theory that COVID-19 was created in a lab. Editor's note, May 17th. When this fact check was first published in September 2020, PolitiFact sources, including researchers, who asserted the COVID virus could not have been manipulated. So let me get this straight, PolitiFact. When someone said we should look into this lab, you asked some researchers, and based on their opinions, said it was debunked. It's amazing, isn't it? That assertion is now more widely disputed. They go on to say, well, we still don't believe it. I don't care what you think. Here's the news. Trump says, April 15, 2020, Trump says U.S. investigating whether virus came from a lab. The the Politico article I showed you. In 2018, diplomats warned of risky coronavirus experiments in a Wuhan lab. No one listened. Let's talk about Dr. Fauci. Let me talk to you about Dr. Fauci, one of the worst possible people to listen to. Do not listen to this man. He is not smart. He is dangerous. Do not get your facts from TV doctors. He is a TV doctor. That is all he is. He advises Biden. He is not an expert on these issues. He repeats what the TV says. He repeats what the TV says. And policy is crafted around this guy. Fauci's ridiculous flip-flop on possible COVID fourth wave. Of course he flip-flopped. Do you remember when Fauci said, don't wear a mask? Out from October 8th, outdated video of Fauci saying there's no reason to be walking around with a mask. Now, I understand. The left says, but Fauci was just saying, what we knew at the time. Early on, conservatives were wearing masks and buying up masks. I actually had someone send me a pack of N95s. I was like, okay. For some reason, conservatives flipped on the mask issue. May have something to do with like research papers out of Denmark or something like that. But early on, they said, wear a mask. And Fauci said, don't wear a mask. And everyone said he's crazy. Then Fauci flip-flopped and said, wear a mask. Then all of a sudden, the mask thing became this huge issue. It's kind of weird. But this was a flip-flop. And it's important to point out it's a flip-flop because people were saying to wear masks. Fauci didn't just come out and say, I've decided you don't need a mask. I'm an expert. He came out and said, other people are wrong. Don't listen to them. I'm right. Then later on, when he realized he was wrong, he flip-flopped. You better wear a mask. They said it was outdated. Fauci, of course, there's going to be a fourth wave. There's not going to be a fourth wave. Sure. From the Daily Mail, Dr. Fauci flip-flops again. Top infectious disease expert says outdoor COVID transmission is low and updated mask guidelines due to be released by the CDC. This is from April 25th. Here's one. This is really, really great. I love this one. Fact check from Newsweek. Did Dr. Anthony Fauci advise wearing 2 masks, then reverse course? Yes, he did. Well, okay, sort of. It's just really, really funny. Let me read you this one so you can understand why you need to ignore Fauci. Talk to your doctor. If you don't trust him, get a second opinion. Get a second opinion anyway. But this is a TV doctor. It's political. They say one thing American poet Amanda Gorman and former Democratic presidential candidate from South Bend, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, what have in common is that they were both seen double masking during Biden's inauguration. Okay. With the new coronavirus variants coming out, blah, blah, blah. So let me just point out, this is from February. They say British YouTuber and writer Paul Watson tweeted less than 1 week after advising Americans that wearing 2 or even 3 masks would be more effective. Dr. Fauci has done a complete 180. They've claimed this from Paul Watson is half true. They're wrong. Paul is correct by their own standard. He said less than a week after advising wearing 2 or 3 masks would be more effective. He's done a 180. That's right. He said it's common sense. The facts. Dr. Fauci appeared on Today on January 25th. Quote, if you have a physical covering with 1 layer, you put another layer on, it just makes common sense that it likely would be more effective. And that's the reason why you see people either double masking or doing a version of N95. A few days later, during a CNN town hall, Fauci emphasized what is recommended by the CDC, saying the CDC does not recommend that you should wear 2 masks, nor does the CDC recommend that you have to wear N95. They just say the most important thing is get everybody to wear a mask. The next day, Fauci answered questions from members of the American Federation of Teachers and the National Education Association and during a live stream. Quote, the CDC has not changed any of its recommendations about mask wearing in the sense of saying wear 2 masks or do an N95. They haven't gone there. They have just said everybody should wear a mask. A 19-second clip posted to Twitter on Sunday captured what Fauci said directly afterwards. The tweet received thousands of interactions. Fauci on double masking, quote, there's no data that indicates that that is going to make a difference. So, my friends, Fauci said, it's just common sense. If you got another layer, it's going to be better. Then later said, there's no data that indicates that it's going to make a difference. And people believe both. And then they don't know what's happening. And then YouTube bans people for contradicting a guy who said everything. So Fauci's like, don't wear a mask. Wear a mask. Wear 2 masks. Don't wear 2 masks. And then you're like, which one am I supposed to say? Which one is YouTube going to ban me for? I don't know. So at this point, just go to timcast.com and become a member because I'm sick of playing these games. Fauci is a moron. He is one of the most dangerous individuals when it comes to COVID. Fauci lied and people died. Early on last year, he said not to wear masks. He came out later and said it was because he wanted to get them for medical professionals and not you. Fauci lied about masks. That is evil. You do not get to decide what people are allowed to do to protect themselves and their families. But Fauci decided in his official capacity to lie to the American people. He said this. He said, we wanted to make sure the medical professionals got the masks. Now, to be fair to the guy, he literally did say, you shouldn't be walking around with the mask. It may protect maybe a droplet, but you need the medical professionals to have them. And smart people said, if they don't work and they don't protect you, why should medical professionals need them? Yeah, Fauci lied about masks. And because of that, people died. And that's the reality. Now let's talk about how stupid the media is and how stupid Fauci is. So Fauci says, first he says there's common sense to wear 2 masks. Then he says there's no data that indicates that's going to make a difference. There are many people who feel, if you really want to have an extra bit of protection, maybe I should put 2 masks on. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's no data that indicates that that is going to make a difference. And that's the reason why the CDC has not changed their recommendation, Fauci said. Another Twitter user replied to the tweet saying, didn't he just say that it was common sense? So when's this story from? This story is from February 1st. My friends, are you ready for the crescendo, the best part of this wonderful, glorious song that is Fauci's incompetence? The CDC recommends double masks to help protect against COVID-19, February 11th. 10 days later, dumb Fauci moron who first said it was common sense, and let's be real, it is. If you're telling people spitting on them gets them sick, of course wearing 2 masks will help. But do you have to? How much more is it really going to help? And I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Fauci then flip-flops and says there's no data. The CDC hasn't changed their recommendations. And then the CDC does. It's just absolutely wonderful. CDC recommends double masks. Amazing. Fauci is wrong all the time. The dude could go on TV and be like, yeah, if you want to be safe, you've got to go base jumping off of the Empire State Building, and people would all just line up to go and do it. Don't go base jumping, please, off the Empire State Building. Sorry. Unless you're like a professional with permits and like safety crews, you probably shouldn't do it. I really doubt you'll get a permit. The point is, Fauci has been wrong so much, and people just keep following what the guy says. Early on, I was like, I like Fauci. I was like, he's doing his best. He's telling us what he can. And I understood as information changes, he'd do better. And then I learned like he was lying about stuff when he was like, yeah, we knew we needed masks, but we want you to have them. We wanted other people to have them. We wanted to make sure we got them, not you. How many people would have lived? Can I just point this out? Why do medical professionals need masks? To protect them from disease, right? Okay. So that they're not transmitting it to each other. Now, Fauci wanted the nurses and the doctors and the medical practitioners to have masks because they're working in hospitals. Why are they working in hospitals? Because there was a huge surge of people with COVID who were sick and were in those hospitals. So what's the solution? Well, if we get masks to people and they don't spread the disease, we could exponentially reduce the amount of people in hospitals, and the doctors wouldn't need the masks. Fauci lied, and people died. It's evil, man. When you have these people in government who think they're smarter than you and better than you, and they lie, cheat, and steal, effectively just burning to the ground, they're not smart. They're not as smart as they think they are. And that's why I don't trust any of these global leaders on this great reset, on this climate change stuff, because they'll do the exact same thing. They will set fire to their own home, figuratively, because it's too cold outside. Fauci lied. People died. The media lied. People died. If Donald Trump said it, they said he was lying. This is the game we've been playing for a long time. Understanding what's going on is getting more and more difficult. But I can tell you this. The Wall Street Journal reports intelligence on 6 staff at Wuhan lab fuels debate on the origin. 3 researchers, November 2019, hospitalized. Is it possible? Yes. Do we know? We don't. But anybody who comes out and tells you it's been debunked is lying to you. Now it's easy for them to be like, well, we know that. No, you didn't. All last year we had been saying it. Next segment's coming up tonight at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.